6 minutes after 11 o'clock. Nice-looking Monday. Hope you're doing well. You know, one thing that you know about human beings, right? Mm-hmm. We're really good at faces. You can, if you haven't been with a friend, like in 40 years, and then you bump into them in the mall,
yes,
you still know that person, right? Even though that face has changed a lot, right? Mm-hmm. It's funny how we're really good at faces. God gave us this amazing ability to identify faces. The other thing that we are really good at is words. Stories, you can watch 3/4 of a movie, and come back to it later on. You can read, half of a book and then be working on another book. And you can have several stories going on at the same time, right? Mm-hmm. And you never lose track of those stories. You're always familiar with how many people did soap operas when they were younger? I don't even know if they still exist, right?
Yeah.
And every soap opera is another story. You got to kind of tuck it away, categorize it in your brain, and come back to it at another date and continue where you left off. Mm-hmm. Isn't it amazing how okay, so but the people who put those together, you ever think about that they're almost like gods, right? Mm-hmm. In a way, they're creating other people, right? When you watch your favorite shows or anything.
Exactly.
Alison Lurie has been with us before, and it's such an honor to have her back. She's got a new book. It's called Words and Worlds, From Autobiography to Zippers. Alison is the recipient of the Pulitzer Prize. She's the author of 3 collections of traditional folk tales for children. She's a professor emeriti, how do you say it, emeriti, of English at Cornell University, a scholar, a humorist, and an award-winning author. And it was such a great conversation last time. It'll be good this time, I trust, as well. Alison, good morning. How you doing?
I'm just fine. I've been looking up Ocala on my computer. It's a beautiful place. I looked at pictures of the park and the downtown, and it's warm there now, not raining and damp and cold like it is here. I wish I were there with you.
Now, where are you? Where are you calling from?
I'm in upstate New York.
Oh, okay, all right. Mm. Well, Robin will be in downstate New York a week from today.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, her son works in New York City, and Robin's a new grandma, by the way. Robin's son's wife just had a baby. Okay. Yeah. Be careful how you say things these days. Yes. Right? So it's raining upstate right now, huh?
Well, it's drizzling, It's a late spring. I'm looking at the peonies, and the buds are just there. They're little and pink, but they're not opening. And everybody says, "Oh, what's happened to your peonies?" Nothing's happened. They're just discouraged by the weather.
I have a question for you. Talk about words, right? Are you more likely to be transported to another place through words you read or through words you write? What takes you away better, writing or reading?
Well, it depends what I'm writing or reading. I mean, if I'm reading a wonderful story, of course it'll work that way. If I'm writing a story, the same thing. I begin to visualize the people I've invented and the things they're doing, and even I'll hear some of their voices. It doesn't matter whether it's mine or yours, but what matters is whether it's a story or facts. When I have to write about something that's out there in the world, I have to hold back and not let my mind invent too much, because otherwise I'll get a letter saying, "Well, there isn't any racetrack in Canandaigua," or whatever it may be.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And your book is wonderful because your book talks to us about your life as a child through now, and it was really, really fascinating that you did not let rejection discourage you.
Well, I had other things going for me. But the time of my worst rejection, I also had 3 kids, and I was busy with them, and they were wonderful. And I hadn't expected, when I was a child, I thought I probably wouldn't have any children, and this was just a wonderful surprise and delight to me that I did. I think if the rejection had come during years when I was in school or working in a job I didn't like, it would have been much harder.
And you also brought that up, too, when you're talking about school, is that Radcliffe had a lot of very, very smart women, and they still do. But during World War II, they weren't treated like they were worthwhile, it seemed.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't feel we were going to Harvard. We were just going to one of the many women's colleges that they have up in New England. And so we didn't have a swelled head or anything like that. In fact, the Harvard students kind of looked down on us. I think we were too conveniently available. And, of course, there were very few of us, only about 1,000 students at Radcliffe when I was there. All the Harvard boys, or Harvard men, as they would have thought of themselves, they were interested in girls from more glamorous schools like Wellesley and Smith. So it wasn't at all like what it is today.
So in the new book, Words and Worlds, give us an idea of what the concept. It's a collection of essays, is that right?
It's a collection of essays and articles and reviews that I have published over the years, the best of all the many I've published, the ones I hated to think that they were going to be lost forever, because you publish in a magazine, back then especially, it was ephemeral. People threw it out. They used it to wrap up garbage or whatever, or to line the cages of the gerbil. So you thought, well, this stuff is going to get lost. And some of the stuff I didn't care about. There are a lot of travel articles that really aren't relevant now because the places I wrote about had changed. But some of the pieces, I just hated to think that nobody would ever read them again or be able to read them again. So I picked the absolute best ones that I could find and collected them together. And it's a big sort of confusion, because I mean there's an article about zippers, there's an article about going to college, there are memoirs of some of my friends. But somehow they all kind of hold together.
You also dissect children's books like Babar or Babar. I never know how to pronounce that word, but that
I think it's Babar. I mean,
Babar.
That's how the French say it anyway. Because I was in Paris once at a Babar celebration, and that's how they pronounced it. Of course, when I was a child, I didn't know French, so I didn't know how to pronounce it.
And that particular collection of stories, you point out that was sort of a reflection of the times.
I'm sorry. You said it was a reflection of the times,
right? And
a reflection of the man who invented Babar. He was a Frenchman. He was born in the early 20th century. It was a world of much different from ours. It was very formal. Babar always wears a suit and tie, and his wife has a flowered dress and a hat, and their children are dressed up the way children today only are for Sunday school. And, but that was the way things were, particularly in France. Food was important, formal presentation of food, elegant drawing rooms. So you have all that. At the same time, you have wonderfully exciting stories in which Babar and his family have to cope with all kinds of dangers and opponents. And in one of the early books, for instance, there's a bunch of rhinoceroses who are obviously the German army, and kids didn't get that, but they make very good opponents for this lovable elephant and his kids.
I think one of the things that writing does, whether it's for children or adults, is it shows us ourselves and maybe corrects some of the mistakes that we've been making. You've been writing a long time. In the early days of your writing, did the expectations that society had on women need to be amended, and therefore were tackled by the writers of that day, including yourself?
Well, I don't think I realized how oppressed in today's terms I was. I didn't really feel oppressed. That was just the way it was. I mean, it never occurred to me when I was in college to wonder why all the professors at Harvard were men. That was the way of the world. I mean, you have to be prodded a bit to wake up and see these things, and it can even. I mean, now I think maybe it's even gone too far, so that people are afraid to say that men have certain abilities and gifts that we should value. You know.
And you also met a lot of people in different professions, like illustrators and poets.
Well, I was very, very lucky to make friends with some wonderful people, and more than I could possibly write about. I'm thinking now I should write about some of the others that I haven't, but people who are still alive, you know. The people I wrote about that in the book are people who died, and I wrote about them because I wanted to preserve my memories of them. But I was very lucky to know people, but I think we all are. We just don't realize how remarkable some of our friends and even our family are.
Yeah, right. So in this particular book, Words and Worlds, were you able to go back in time, so to speak, in your mind as you were writing this and revisit some of the people who are no longer with us?
Well, this is a collection of already published essays. So what I did is I went back to the individual pieces and thought more about the people I've written. And in some cases, I added a lot of material. In other cases, I didn't, because I felt I'd said what I wanted to say. But sure, I did feel I sort of mourned them again as I went over these articles, yes.
That's interesting.
You talk about fashion in your book, and I especially love the chapter on aprons.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know. I was amazed by how few women understand the purpose of aprons these days. I mean, you go to somebody's house for lunch, and you'll see that she should have been wearing an apron while she was making soup for you. You don't say anything, but sometimes I'll give people aprons. I make all my own aprons because you can't really find them in the stores now. And sometimes I'll pass them on because they're useful, especially if they've got a pocket.
Oh, exactly. I love aprons.
One thing I want to write about, it's such a small matter, but I'm annoyed by the way pockets have disappeared from clothes, women's clothes. For men, it's okay. They've got plenty of pockets. I used to be that you bought a pair of slacks or jeans, and they would have pockets. Now they don't. They're saving money by not using that little extra piece of cloth and that extra 10 minutes of sewing. But what's the point of a skirt or a pair of slacks with no pockets? Where are you going to put your keys? Where are you going to put the Kleenex you need to wipe your kid's face? You know, it's ridiculous.
Exactly.
That's good stuff. The book is called Words and Worlds. Where does the title come from? What does the title reference?
Well, the title, it comes from my sitting down with a big piece of paper and writing down all the possible titles I could think of. And I mean, at one point this book was called Writing for Fun, but my editor said, no, that makes it sound too lighthearted. It'll suggest that there's nothing serious here. Okay, I'll start again. So I had all these. That's how I do with titles. And if you're a writer, this is the way to find a title for your book. Write down all the words that you think relate to the book, maybe even the name of the hero or heroine, and sort of move them around and change them. So if you write down the word love, and then you write down love, loving, or lovely, or
Right.
love,
Yeah.
and you write down the name of the hero. Let's say his name is what should I say his name is? Maybe his name is Larry. And you have Larry's love, or Larry's loving,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
loving Larry.
That sounds
you play
good.
around with all these words, and then a title will suddenly appear.
So where has your writing taken you that you wouldn't have gone if it were not for the writing? I don't know if that's a weird question or not, but
Well, I suppose the most, I'm not a terribly well-traveled person. It's taken me to places where I've been asked to give readings or teach courses that I would never have gone. For instance, I spent 3 times I've been to North Carolina to teach at universities there, and because someone there had read one of my books and wanted to invite me, I would never have known the South if it hadn't been for my writing, and that would have been a great loss, I think.
Did you know that your book Foreign Affairs was up for a Pulitzer Prize, and how did you feel when you won one?
I was blown away. I mean, I never thought it, because usually you have to. I realized afterwards that a Pulitzer Prize winning book has to have some darkness in it, and most of my books didn't. But this is the one book in which a major character dies, and I think that's why it was considered, because it was a little dark, a little sad, really.
Well, congratulations on that award. That is absolutely outstanding.
Thank you.
are you in White Plains right now?
No, I'm in upstate New York, in Ithaca.
Oh, Ithaca. Okay, I don't know why I was thinking.
Ithaca, it's where Cornell University was, because for many, many years, I taught part-time at Cornell.
And you mentioned the theater in your book. Did you ever want to be an actress?
Oh, no, it's a good thing I didn't, because I could never have been an actress on account of the way I look, which you'll find out about if you buy my book.
What? Let me see the book.
No.
I don't think you.
I don't like appearing in public. I like seeing my friends and going to parties, but public appearances are hard for me. Teaching was hard for me until I realized that students don't care what a professor looks like.
Exactly.
They're more interested in what they say.
So, what do you think about technology when it comes to books and writing? I'm sure you started out on an old-fashioned typewriter, and I'm sure you probably. I mean, books nowadays are books or Kindle books. Do you have any thoughts about the writing process and the reading process, and how technology has changed both of those?
I think there have been wonderful developments, and there have been unfortunate developments. I think the fact that you can now listen to a novel or a story or biography or history, whatever you like, while you're driving your boring half-hour commute every day twice, and you can, instead of being bored and restless, you can really have a wonderful time in the car. So I think that is great. I think that Kindle is great, but you can take it on the airplane, and even when the bulbs get dim and you couldn't possibly see the book you brought with you, you can see the Kindle.
Right.
So
right.
there's some great developments. I think the disappearance of bookstores is very, very sad, because it means that you just don't always hear about books you would love.
Right. Yeah, I like the idea of going into a bookstore and finding things I did not go in there for, just for one reason or another.
Absolutely.
Right?
And how are you going to hear about these books? If you don't have a nice bookstore to go in, with even maybe a chair to sit in, or we've got one good bookstore here in Ithaca, and it makes a big difference. What I know about and what I read,
Well,
you have a good bookstore in Ocala?
We have a Barnes and Noble. I'm trying to think if we have any small bookstores left.
Yeah, we do. We've got 2 small bookstores left, and they're wonderful to go in.
Yeah,
You're lucky. I'm glad to hear that.
And you wrote there is a report in there on modern witchcraft.
Yes. It's true. I was asked to review a couple of books about the history of witchcraft, which is interesting, but then somebody said, there's witches right here in Tompkins County. And it's true, there are. Of course, they present themselves as white witches. They're interested in nature and in healing with herbs and with good vibrations. And if there are any black witches, they're keeping a pretty low profile. But my husband and I went to one of their public meetings in which they were celebrating the winter solstice. It's really a sort of wonderful thing. It's something that regular churches do sometimes too. They'll celebrate that this is the darkest day of the year.
I always wanted to go to one of them.
Or this is midsummer and the sun is high. I admire that.
Yeah. I always wanted to go to one of them.
I bet you can. I bet you'll find if you look up not witches, but if you look up paganism, that's the word to look for. And there are what are called neo-pagans. Often there are people who are also Christians, but they want to celebrate nature and the seasons and flowers and plants. And I'm sure you could, if you were, if you asked politely, that you could go to one of these festivals.
Yeah.
Ask politely, Larry.
Oh, they dance naked? I just found some pictures.
If they knew you were coming, perhaps they would. Otherwise, probably not.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, my gosh, that was too funny.
You really do a most wonderful job in your book. You really make the past alive, and you're very funny, and then there are some serious tones as well. It is such an enjoyable read.
Thank you so much.
And I never knew about Edward Gorey, and I really enjoyed that chapter.
Oh, thank you. You didn't know his work.
No, but now I do. So thank you.
If you look him up online, he has wonderful greeting cards and very funny. He has wonderful cat cards. He loved cats. He must had it. At one time, I think he had a dozen cats, and he has the most charming cat cards that you can get online. And look him up if you like cats, or maybe you prefer dogs. There aren't so many. There are a couple of dog cards, but not many. He wasn't a dog person.
Alison Lurie, thank you so much. What a sweet conversation. The book is called Words and Worlds. I found it on Amazon, and Alison has a website also, AlisonLurie.com. Thank you, Alison.
And thank you for inviting me. Nice to talk to you again.
You are welcome. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Fox News, I'm Chris Foster. President Trump and the First Lady, hosted by Queen Elizabeth in London, have been shown some American-related artifacts in the Royal Gift Collection and laid a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Warrior at Westminster Abbey. London Mayor Sadiq Khan says about the president's visit on Sky News.
We're going to have good relations with the USA, but I don't think we should be rolling out the red carpet.
President Trump on Twitter calls him a stone-cold loser. The president's proposed tariffs on Mexican imports may cause prices to go up a bit at the Chipotle Mexican fast food chain.
Chipotle's chief financial officer, Jack Hartung, says its costs could increase $15 million this year if